Welcome back. It's Ed Martin here on a Pro America Report. Go to proamericareport.com and sign up for the daily email, or phyllisschlafly.com to track all of the columns and essays and other things, especially the ones posted by John and Andy Schlafly. Their weekly column, the Phyllis Schlafly. Well, I guess we call it the Schlafly Report. Phyllis's name. Phyllis isn't in there all the time, but John and Andy Schlafly write this week's column, which is posted over at townhall.com. Also, Judicial Supremacy Bites Again. Well, this was really good a day and a half ago when it posted, or a day ago when it posted, and we were talking about the Supreme Court and in the case of Bostock versus Clayton County, and how the Justice Gorsuch and Chief Justice Roberts joined with the liberals and they rewrote the Civil Rights Act. But that's not even the story now, as we've been talking about today. DACA, Chief Justice Roberts was able to find a way that he and 4 of the liberals can now say, well, you didn't quite get the process right, just like the citizenship question on the census last year, so you can't do it. It's not illegal to do what you're doing. It's not against the Constitution. We just don't like the process. So, John, I guess I'm a little frustrated today. I'm not a little, more than a little frustrated. I'm actually kind of bummed out because I just think that the swamp is just swallowing us up. Tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, Ed, of course, we're good with you again, Ed. But yes, we are in the crunch time when the most contentious Supreme Court decisions are coming out fast and furious. And, of course, our mentor, Phyllis Schlafly, wrote about judicial supremacy, as she called it, had a book of that name, where the judges like to have the last word on important social issues. And the last word on the subject of transgenderism, for example. Now, that is so wrong. The issue of transgender people, which is just, kind of only appeared out of nowhere a few years ago. It has kicked around in Congress, which hasn't passed anything. And suddenly the Supreme Court is presumed to make a broad and sweeping decision on that whole issue, although this week's decision only applies to employment. But there's so many other areas where the transgender issue has caused tremendous concern, including the schools, including sports, including public restrooms. And the majority said, well, that's all that's left for future cases. But what it means is the federal judge is going to decide these future cases, and the federal court should not be addressing these future cases. They should be left to the people. So it is frustrating.
John, before we go to the DACA case and this notion that this sort of what I call the procedural, objections of Chief Justice Roberts, it feels like the administrative state and the swamp growing bigger and bigger, and you have to play by a set of rules and all that. I heard you say on a call earlier in the week, I think I got it right, that this Supreme Court decision earlier in the week that says that sex could mean transgender. It's not just man and woman. It could be gender. It could be all the other things. You said, I think, it opens up the likely process, or is the likely prospect now is decades of litigation over these questions. Explain that, what you meant there.
Well, the question of sex permeates so many aspects of life and law. And if the Supreme Court is going to have the last word on what the word sex means, I mean, anything that touches on that, under the theory, the misbegotten theory of textualism that unfortunately Justice Gorsuch adopted, contrary to Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh, that means, that is such a key, pivotal, fundamental definition about so many things. And so it means that the courts will ultimately decide these things. And, of course, when, 66 years ago, when Congress prohibited discrimination in employment because of sex, they obviously, everyone admits that they certainly were not talking about people who wanted to change their sex or dress up in the opposite sex. That's not it. They
Right.
recognized only the sex at the chromosomal level, a fixed, enduring, and unchanging attribute of every human being. And it's simply astounding that fundamental word could be redefined so quickly by courts. And so many things will depend on that. You know, school sports is one of the most obvious cases, but there are many others.
We're talking John Schlafly, and again, you go to townhall.com for the Schlafly report, and also post it over at phyllisschlafly.com. John, turning to the DACA case today, I mean, I'm summarizing, and I know I mentioned to you off the air, you haven't read it closely, or at least haven't read more than the summaries of it, which is long decisions always. But the nuts and bolts of it, to me, it reminds me, it's strikingly similar in general contours to the citizenship question, and I've talked about this on the show already today. The citizenship question on the census, where President Trump was told, well, his Commerce Department, it's not, we're not objecting yet. We're not arriving at the question of whether it's even legal or not. One assumes it's legal to ask about citizenship since we do it on other aspects of the long form census, whatever. But Roberts last year said, oh no, you didn't do it. You didn't change you didn't do the process correctly. And today, DACA, somehow the executive authority to start a program, which Obama did, and then rescind a program, which Trump tried to do, has been done incorrectly. Again, it feels just like the swamp is just getting deeper, and these guys that know how to play the swamp game are playing it against we the people who elected a president to do this stuff.
Well, that is so true, and that the principle was acknowledged in the dissenting opinion by Justice Alito, who, frankly, is, he's become the most valuable player in the Supreme Court. And as he wrote in his very short and very readable dissent, Justice Alito said, this is an example of what is happening to our Constitution and to our government. I mean, the president was elected in part on his campaign statement that DACA was unlawful, and he promised to change that. And when he was elected, and he carried out what he promised to do. And yet, the courts are now saying that they can't do that. And it really is a challenge to our democratic form of government that in case after case after case, the people who elected Donald Trump to the presidency have not been able to get what we want. But on the other hand, people who create a ruckus and march and demonstrate and break windows and set fires are getting what they want. And they're even getting the president's attention, not to mention the media's attention and everyone else's attention, as their demands and their needs have to come first. That's a very bad situation that we're in. It really is a form of mob rule that we're facing, where the peaceful people who work within the system in a campaign cannot forget what they want, but the violent demonstrators, looters, arsonists, and so on do get what they want. So this is a very, very unstable situation, and it's got to change this year.
Well, and John, let me ask you one part of it. I mean, a lot of the times, and earlier in the program, I was asking about from people about how what to do. I was asking one of the guests what to do. What do we do about it? One thing we do is elections, and elections have consequences. But John, today the president tweeted after obviously two decisions that were upsetting, especially one by Justice Gorsuch that was really surprising. He wrote the opinion in, and the president tweeted that he's going to put out a new list of who his Supreme Court justices that'll pick from for his next picks. I'll talk a little bit about that. And I guess one thing is it possible to vet? I mean, for a conservative, you can't. It doesn't seem like conservatives can vet a Supreme Court pick. On the left, they stick to it. None of them. They don't seem to ever get that wrong. You don't see a left winger become conservative. But what's your feeling on this and the upcoming election and how it all fits together?
Well, you're certainly right, Ed, that I can't think of a single important decision where any of the liberal justices have peeled off to join a conservative decision. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Instead, we see the reverse. And I think it was an excellent idea of the president to refresh, let's say, his list of candidates for the Supreme Court. After all, the list was compiled 4 years ago. A lot has happened in 4 years. And I do think and that was such an important factor in his campaign. And it's time to go back to the list and kind of revet the people who are on it, and perhaps it should be pruned a little bit and refreshed, and maybe drop some and add some, so that we have a new list for this year's campaign, and we hope that it's more secure, more in terms of the Trump agenda, perhaps.
Yeah, it's tough to know. It's tough to believe it. And, I want to see Biden do his list. We'll see. But, John, I got to go. Unfortunately, I'm up against a break. John Schlafly, the Schlafly Report, available at phyllisschlafly.com. We'll take a quick break and be right back. It's Ed Martin on the Pro America Report. Be right back.